For many people, the American West is remembered through famous landmarks and stories of pioneers, but the real story is found in places, objects, and photographs, also with records that have survived over time. In this presentation, we'll explore how historic preservation helps us better understand Colorado's past by looking at homesteads, mining towns, museum, and living history across the state. Using a combination of primary and secondary sources, we'll see how these locations preserve the experiences of the people who built communities, who worked the land, and shaped Colorado's history. We'll be discussing Florence in Colorado, St. Elmo to Rockledge Ranch, and South Park City. Each site offers a unique window into the lives of those who came before us. These preserved places remind us that history is more than dates in a textbook. It is the very story that we still see, learn, and live today. Preserving Colorado's past, why historic places matter. When most people think about historic preservation, they picture famous landmarks or large museums. However, some of Colorado's most important historic places are much smaller. An older homestead, an abandoned mining town, an historic downtown, or a local museum may not look impressive at first, but each tells an important story about the people who built and lived in Colorado. Public historians work to preserve these places because history is more than dates, books, and names. Historic places give us a chance to see and experience the past for ourselves. Older buildings, artifacts, landscapes help us understand how people lived, worked, and overcame challenges. They provide a connection to history that books alone cannot offer to the individual. In this presentation, I will explore several historic places across the state of Colorado, each one offering a different part of Colorado's history and demonstrating why preservation matters. Saving these places is not just about protecting old buildings, it's about protecting the stories that help explain who we are as a people today. Homesteads, preserving everyday history. Colorado's story begins with people who settled in the mountains, valleys, and plains. During the late 1800s, thousands of people traveled west hoping to better their lives. They built small homes, started ranches and farms, and worked hard to survive in a difficult environment. Most of these families never became famous. Due to that, their homes have become some of the best sources for understanding everyday life on the frontier. The buildings, land, and tools around help historians learn how these families worked, lived, and often raised their children. Preserving homesteads allows us to study architecture, farming, settlement, and everyday family life in early Colorado. Visitors can walk through these homes and imagine what life was like more than 100 years ago. These places remind us that Colorado was built by people who were quite ordinary, yet their stories are just as important as those of famous leaders. When a homestead is lost, we lose more than just that old building. We lose a part of Colorado's history and, often more than not, a chance to understand people who lived there during that era. Ghost towns and communities often tell stories about Colorado's mining history. Colorado's mining history boom created hundreds of towns across the state. Many grew up as people searched for gold and silver. People opened businesses, families started to move in, and communities began to thrive. However, when the mines closed, many towns were left behind. Today, places like St. Elmo help preserve this important part of Colorado's history. Although the town is no longer active, its streets and buildings still show visitors what life was like during the mining era. People can walk through the town, and it gives them a better sense and a better understanding of what the opportunities and hardships were for the early settlers. Public historians often describe ghost towns as an outdoor museum because they preserve real places where history actually happened. They help explain how Colorado grew how it expanded and changed, and how quickly success could disappear. Preserving ghost towns allows generations to experience this history instead of simply reading about it. Historic downtowns, keeping history part of everyday life. Historic preservation is not only about abandoned buildings. Many historic places continue to serve their communities even today. Florence is a good example of how preservation can protect history while supporting modern businesses. Many of Florence's older brick buildings have been restored instead of being torn down. Today, there are homes and shops, restaurants, galleries, and antique stores galore. This process, called adaptive reuse, allows historical buildings to remain useful while keeping their original character. The historic downtown also gives the community a strong sense of their self and historical identity. They remain residents of their local history while attracting visitors who want to experience authentic Colorado communities. Florence shows that preserving historic buildings benefits both the past and the future. Museums and living history. Museums are another important part of historic preservation. They protect artifacts, documents, historic buildings that might have otherwise been lost. Just as important, museums help explain why these objects matter. The Rocky Leg Ranch Historic Site gives visitors the chance to experience Colorado's past by exploring historic buildings and watching living history. These demonstrations are perfect to get a better understanding. Instead of simply reading about histories, visitors can actually come and see those histories performed in real life. The Colorado Springs Pioneer Museum also plays an important role by preserving thousands of artifacts connected to the Pikes Peak region. These collections help protect local history while making it available to students, researchers, and the public. Museums help turn preservation into education by making history easier to understand and appreciate. Individual preservation efforts. Historic preservation is often supported by museums, local communities, and local government. However, individuals can also make an important difference. Take, for example, Bishop Castle. This is a perfect example. Jim Bishop spent decades building the castle by hand. Today, it's one of Colorado's most unique landmarks. Although it is very different from a traditional historic site, it represents his creativity, his determination, and his personal dedication to his craft. Places like Bishop Castle remind us that history is always being created. The places we choose to protect today may become the historic landmarks of tomorrow. Colorado history can be found in many different places. This includes the homesteads, where we tell our stories of early settlers and everyday life, ghost towns, which preserve the history of the mining boom. Historic downtowns show how communities can protect the past while continuing to grow into a better future for our children. Museums preserve important artifacts and share them with the public. Places like Bishop Castle remind us that every one person can work hard and become one of Colorado's histories. Together, these places show that historic preservation is about much more than saving old buildings. It protects the people, the communities, the stories that help us shape Colorado into what it is today. It strengthens local education, identity, and gives support for future generations so that they too can have a chance to experience history for themselves in the current day. As public historians, we understand that once a historic place is gone, it cannot truly be replaced. By preserving Colorado's historic places today, we can make sure that their stories continue to educate and inspire future generations for years to come.